So is the United States really in demise, much like we're all reading on the internet and seeing on YouTube and all of those kinds of things? We thought we would tackle that subject on this week's episode of Dollars and Cents, along with the biggest failure that people make when it comes to retirement planning, and more importantly, how to avoid said failure, along with a disturbing trend out there involving credit card debt for Generation Z and what to do about it. And I guess that last one probably applies to anybody of any age if they have debt of any kind, particularly on the credit card side of things, especially in today's world when we're seeing credit card rates 25, 26, 27, maybe even more than that, depending upon which card you have. So all kinds of stuff dialed up for this week's episode of Dollars and Cents, where we help you make sense out of all of life's decisions involving your dollars. One of Central Florida's longest running radio programs, also a top 25 financial planning podcast, coming to you, of course, on a host of radio stations throughout the Central Florida region. Also, of course, on a host of podcast platforms as well. Have any trouble finding our channel on your favorite platform? Go to our website, NelsonFinancialPlanning.com. There, you'll see a bunch of icons. Click on the icon that looks most familiar, and you will get immediately connected over to our channel on that particular platform. Once there, here's the key piece of information. Once there, make sure you hit subscribe. That way you'll know when we upload new content, which of course we do each and every week because we do the program each and every week. My name is Joel Garris. I'm a certified financial planner, certified financial fiduciary at Nelson Financial Planning, where we got a team of great folks, all of whom happen to be certified financial fiduciaries as well. They stand ready to help you change your life with a successful and cost-effective financial plan. So, man, you'd almost have to be living under a rock these days to not see these articles and these discussions about the imminent demise of the U.S. And I think that really is contributing an awful lot to sort of the general negative perception of the future. It manifests itself in a host of ways, some of them focused on the fact that is the U.S. dollar going away? Is the U.S. Going to be a third world country, if you will, in the future? And so as we were thinking about that topic, we came upon an interesting article actually written by Fareed Zakaria. Now, if you don't know who that is, he's actually a host on CNN and does a lot of opinion pieces, hosts a show for them. And in this particular case, he wrote an article that appeared in the magazine Foreign Affairs. And so what was interesting about the article is, as I read it, and actually a friend of mine shared it with me. I did not see it originally, but they thought it was an interesting article and wanted to share it with me. So I have a torn out copy of it from the magazine, courtesy of a good friend of mine. And as I read the article, it really did, I think, share a lot of perspective that is sorely lacking on some of these really fear-mongering, fear-based types of conversations that we see out there on the internet at large. So it had a lot of statistics in it, and it would be impossible to kind of go through them all. It was about a 16, 17-page article. It was a pretty extensive article, but I wanted to just kind of share some of the highlights that caught our attention to maybe help provide some perspective, maybe help you regain some perspective on exactly what is going on. The reality is that the U.S. remains in commanding position relative to its rivals and remains the world's most formidable power. Now, what has changed? What has changed is that the world's full of, dare I say, I guess a bunch of more teenagers or countries that act like teenagers than ever before. There's less sort of acquiescence to friendly Uncle Sam, but the reality is that while there may be less acquiescence, it still doesn't change the power dynamic, right? I mean, think of it like as a parent. When the kids were little, you had full control over them. You still had all the power. When they were teenagers, they didn't acquiesce quite so much, but you still had the power to ground them, take away the car keys, and those kinds of things. But ultimately, that lack of acquiescence certainly contributes to the feeling that maybe you've got less power. But here are the stats, and I think the stats speak volumes. So in 1990, U.S. per capita, and there's a lot of statistics involving economic, social, military that we're just going to kind of run through, kind of hit the highlights to give you some perspective this morning. So in 1990, U.S. per capita income was 17% higher than Japan and 24% higher than Western Europe. Fast forward to today, U.S. per capita income, so that's per person income, is now 54% higher than Japan and 32% higher than Western Europe. Does that sound like a country in decline? I don't think so. 2008, we will continue. 2008, the American and the European Union economies were just about the same size, 2008. Today, the U.S. economy is twice as large as the European Union. Does that sound like a country in demise? The lead in technology here in the U.S. is clearly unsurpassed. If you look at the top 10 most valuable U.S. tech companies, top 10 U.S. most valuable tech companies, they have a greater market capitalization than the combined value of the stock markets of Canada, France, Germany, and the U.K. 10 tech companies valued at more than the combined value of the stock markets of the UK, Germany, France, Canada, all put together. We'll shift to some of the latest and greatest technology, right? Artificial intelligence. Everybody's talking about that. Same kind of story, same kind of spread. In the U.S., there's $26 billion in venture capital that has gone to AI startups. That is 6 times the amount that has happened in China. Demographically, a reasonably healthy U.S. fertility rate, not necessarily above that 2.1 that's needed for perfect societal replacement, but at a rate of 1.7, much, much stronger than Germany at 1.5 fertility rate, South Korea at 0.8, China at 1.1. Let's not forget 50 years of one-child policy doesn't really make for a good long-term economic structure, particularly in China. Here was one that really caught my attention and helps to bring perspective, and this has to deal with military might. And I was talking to a client about this past week, the look on the face was like, wow, I didn't realize that. So here we go. Aircraft carriers in operation. Aircraft carriers in operation. The U.S. has 11. Guess how many China has? Come on, guess. Come on, think about it. 2. Okay? So before you kind of really get too far down the rabbit hole of where we are in relative power dynamics, we encourage you to take a moment and look at the real hard facts. You'll probably be surprised. Even I was surprised by some of these statistics that we're sharing with you this morning on the program. If you want to read the whole article, it's a full article by Fareed Zakaria, Foreign Affairs, entitled "The Self-Doubting Superpower." I think that headline sort of sums it up pretty well. Hopefully, you found some of those stats interesting as well and to give some perspective. With that, we're going to take a break and return after these messages here on Dollars and Cents with Joel Garris of Nelson Financial Planning. You always hear so much about retirement planning, right? I mean, it just seems like that's all that anybody talks about. But what's interesting is the biggest issue that we see when we sit down and talk to folks about sort of engaging in that conversation about making that transition to retirement is not necessarily a failure of retirement planning, but a failure to really think through retirement income planning. So on this segment, we're going to talk a little bit about what the difference is between those two, retirement planning versus retirement income planning, and sort of what you need to know in order to achieve that successful retirement income plan. So welcome on into Dollars and Cents, where we help you make sense out of all of life's decisions involving your dollars. One of Central Florida's longest running radio programs, also a top 25 financial planning podcast. So make sure you go to our website at nelsonfinancialplanning.com and look for the icons that will immediately connect you over to our channel on your favorite podcast platform, or even on YouTube as well. If you want to see how much I do this radio show by talking with my hands, you get to see all of that on our YouTube channel as well. My name, of course, is Joel Garris. I'm a certified financial planner, certified financial fiduciary at Nelson Financial Planning, where we got a team of great folks who also happen to be certified financial fiduciaries as well. You got the pleasure of meeting our newest one, Chet Cowhart, here earlier this month on one of the programs. And ultimately, they are ready this week to help you improve your life with a successful and cost-effective retirement plan, financial plan, most importantly, retirement income plan. So let's start with that difference between what's the difference between a retirement plan and a retirement income plan. A retirement plan, I think, is what everybody sort of gravitates to because it's probably the most straightforward part, right? The retirement planning part asks the question, well, do I have enough? It's sort of like that. If you think of it from a business perspective, it's sort of like that balance sheet analysis, right? How much do I own? How much do I owe? What are my assets? What are my liabilities? And to a certain extent, with the retirement planning, there's a little bit of a lack of control, if you will. Now, obviously, you have full control over how much money you save along the way, things like that. But you don't necessarily have full control over the value of your assets at any given point in time, right? Because that's a natural reflection of the underlying volatility of both the stock and the bond market as well. So you don't really have that as full of control on that retirement planning side of things. Not full control, of course, over what the economy is going to do, what the market's going to do, how that's going to affect the value of your assets, and of course, inflation, right? Those things are independent of what your retirement planning aspect is. Now, if you think of retirement income planning, that really starts to dig into more the almost like the P&L side, right? So if you got a business, you probably know to look at your balance sheet because that shows what you own, what you owe. But then your income statement, your profit and loss statement, that tells you how much money's coming in and where the expenses are, and then ultimately how much you get to keep. And that's sort of the core of retirement income planning: is where should you get money from? What's going to be the tax implications of it, and where should you really focus on in terms of generating that income, and what's the timing of it, and what does it look like for the beneficiaries? All of that are aspects of retirement income. So with retirement income planning, there's really a lot more control, if you will, over where you're going to get the income from, because, right, you can pick and choose exactly where your income comes from in retirement, but you have to do it properly, right, in order to understand some of the pitfalls, in order to make good decisions. So with retirement income planning, we thought we would just kind of give you three things to kind of consider when you're thinking about retirement income planning. And of course, first and foremost, it has to start with Social Security, right? Social Security for most Americans is pretty good chunk of the income that they're going to get during the course of their retirement. So you have to understand Social Security withdrawal strategies, application strategies, things like that. Obviously, we're not going to get all into that on this episode. If you're curious about some of our philosophies on Social Security and when to apply for it, when to take it, make sure you go to our category or our catalog of past shows, whether that's on your podcast platform or whether that's on YouTube. Look for the shows in particular that feature myself and a fellow certified financial fiduciary, Rob Field. He also happens to be a national Social Security advisor. And those oftentimes will then feature an extensive discussion of Social Security. So want to learn kind of more details about that, we refer you to many of the prior episodes that we've done. But the issue that gets missed, I think, with Social Security, and you should see the look on people's faces when they learn this for the first time, is that Social Security, in fact, is taxable. Now, there are certain income levels where it's not, but those are pretty low, and they haven't ever been indexed for inflation over the past 40 years, so they haven't really changed. So more and more people find that they are paying taxes on their Social Security. How much taxes you are paying on your Social Security depends on how much other income. So at certain levels, okay, very low levels, then you're not going to maybe pay anything of tax on the Social Security. And then at other windows, there's 50% that might be taxable, all the way up to the highest level, which is 85% of that Social Security being taxable. So in terms of retirement income planning, the first thing you always got to kind of wrap your hands around is Social Security, because let's face it, that is a large part of most people's income in retirement. But it's taxable, which gets us to the next category of discussion, which is that getting an understanding of your taxes, because particularly from a retirement income perspective, this is really where you can make the biggest difference, is knowing the tax nature of the assets that you have as part of your retirement plan, but then really looking at, okay, where does it make sense to take the retirement income from, and at what times should I be doing that? And that really requires you to sort of know the split, is what we kind of refer to that. The split between assets that are going to be taxable fully as ordinary income, and taxes that will be less, in buckets that will be less taxable. So that might be after-tax monies, that might be Roths, that might be things that generate out dividends, capital gains, things like that. Because remember, dividends and capital gains are taxed at lower rates. And if you're a couple making less than $120,000 per year, you're going to find your dividends and capital gains for your long-term capital gains rates is actually zero. So that's pretty tax efficient, and certainly something that you want to be aware of as you're plotting out that retirement income picture. And then thirdly, of course, is inflation, right? That's always there. And you probably want to assume 3% and not the 1 or 2% that we might have seen in the past. If you look at historical averages, it's right around 3%. So you probably want to take that as your assumption. The reality is, while 3% doesn't sound like much, over 12 years, something that costs $10 is now going to cost 15. So that's a problem. Dealing with inflation goes to your investment allocation, right? You still need some level of growth in some parts of your portfolio. If you're retiring at 65 or 67 or whatever the case may be, that's still a good number of years in front of you. Think about that example, right? In just 12 years, the $10 item is going to cost 15. That means you're going to need some growth, some return more than that 3%. And so where you need to be careful is don't overload on the bond side. Far too many people, they get to retirement and they hear the message of, oh, you got to be 60% in bonds or something like that. No. You really need to be thinking about this more from the perspective of inflation. and taxes, and what's the impact going to be. So those are just some of the key considerations, if you will, the key differences between retirement planning, which kind of everybody talks about, and retirement income planning, which is far more nuanced and detailed, and ultimately something that you can control and make a real difference in your retirement. With that, we're going to take a break, and after these messages return here on Dollars and Cents with Joel Garris of Nelson Financial Planning. Well, unfortunately for Generation Z, there is a disturbing trend that we're going to talk about on this segment of Dollars and Cents. Unfortunately, younger Americans starting out with much more credit card debt than prior generations. That's a pretty disturbing trend, particularly in today's world when credit cards, oftentimes those interest rates can be north of 25%. So how bad is it? Well, here are the numbers. Average credit card balance for folks in the age range of 22 to 24, so that's Generation Z, is stood at the end of the fourth quarter of last year, 2023, an amount that equaled $2,834. Same number 10 years prior was 2,248 in 2013, a 26% increase. And again, what's bad about that is not, in addition to the fact that it's a 26% increase, the interest rates are incredibly high right now. So you're falling further and further behind as a result. And on the flip side, in contrast, median wage growth for college grads has been relatively stagnant over that same time period. In 2020, median salary was about $59,000. Today, it's about $60,000. So not a lot of change within that past 3 or 4 year period of time. The biggest inflation issue, and it's funny about this, it used to be that the biggest inflation issue was healthcare, and believe me, that's still a major problem that have sort of affected seniors more. And that's certainly very much true. But the other issue that is rearing its head is affecting this younger age group as well. And that has to deal with rents. And so if you look at rents, which typically account for about a third of that average paycheck, particularly just kind of starting out, rent is a big consumer of your income. And when you look at what the median rent is today, it's like almost $2,000, $1,987 to be exact, a 22% increase in just the past 4 years. So that's a pretty tough dynamic for that age group, early 20s Gen Z. Increasing trend, disturbing trend in terms of the amount of credit card debt, 26% more than what it was. Relatively stagnant wage growth with the backdrop of a much greater increase in rents that sort of much like healthcare costs disproportionately affect those over the age of 65. The rent disproportionately affects those probably under the age of 30. So clearly a disturbing trend. So on this segment of the program, we thought we would talk about some of the things that you may want to do. Maybe, you're listening to us on a podcast and you fit that age group. Maybe you've got kids, much like I do, in that age group. And so how can you kind of talk with them and give them some perspective on what they should be doing? Well, in this segment of the program, we're going to give kind of 3 key concepts or 3 key takeaways that we want you to share with those folks that certainly may find themselves in credit card debt or having to pay more and more for rent. And I guess that probably applies to anybody of any age, not just in your early 20s. So that'll be our topic here on this segment of Dollars and Cents, where we help you make sense out of all of life's decisions involving your dollars. My name is Joel Garris. I'm a certified financial planner, certified financial fiduciary at Nelson Financial Planning. Make sure you take some time to go to our website, Nelson Financial Planning, and check out things like our investment philosophy, what values guide us, and also get familiar with the entire team. It's a team of great folks, all of whom are certified financial fiduciaries as well, that stand ready this week to help you improve your financial life through a cost-effective and successful financial plan. So, disturbing trend out there, that is for sure. More credit card debt than ever before. Toss in student loan debt as well. That really makes for a pretty tough combination. So what to do? 3 key points that we would share, and not necessarily are these 3 key takeaways going to be easy to do or fun to do. Let's face it, in life, if you're trying to course correct or improve yourself, it's not really the easiest thing in the world to do. Fixing bad behavior, no matter what it is never easy in any way, shape, or form. So, let's start with what you need to do. First and foremost, start to track those expenses. Now, obviously, this is not a fun exercise, but it is a little bit easier to do in today's world because you have this little phone, right, that's in your pocket, and it's got a ton of apps on it. And if you're like me, you can't find the app that you're looking for, but that's a different conversation. I guess there's a little search button, which I could use that. But anyway, there's a ton of apps, right? And a lot of them are designed to specifically try and help you track your expenses. And if you're tracking expenses, you might as well track income too. And in essence, voila, you have created a budget. There's a major chapter in our book, Next Gen Dollars and Cents, that talks about the importance of budgeting and talks about the importance of establishing a budget. In fact, in the book, we also created sort of a downloadable budget courtesy of a QR code for you to use to be able to adjust and make your own. We encourage you to check out our website at Nelson Financial Planning on how to get your copy of the book, or you can go immediately over to Amazon, and of course it is available on Prime, and the folks at Amazon will immediately ship it out. I always recommend folks take us up on our offer of a free consultation, and when you come in for the free consultation, Jamie and Carolyn are usually pretty good about making sure that you get a free copy of the book as well, so then that way you can avoid the whole Amazon $14.99 thing. Anyway, budget. It starts with budget. If you're looking to improve, get out of debt, that is where the conversation starts. Keeping track of the income, keeping track of the expenses. You may be surprised at where some of that money is going. And then once you've done that, then you've got to come up with a game plan for paying down debt, right? This is another chapter in our book, Next Gen Dollars and Cents. Use that budget to really kind of track and see where you can free up some cash flow, and then use that to pay down that debt. Now, our approach is to focus, particularly in today's world, to start with kind of the highest interest rate first. Now, there are others that say, start with the smallest balance and, pay that off, and then gradually, increase the payments on the next smallest amount that you owe. But unfortunately, in today's world, where you can have credit cards that are pushing high 20s, maybe even to 30% in terms of the interest rate, it just seems from a financial perspective that you would want to really focus first on those to really make the most amount of effort at eliminating that thing that is generating the biggest cost to you on a regular basis. So pay down that debt. And then lastly, the importance of not just emergency savings, but a regular savings account. And here I draw that distinction. An emergency savings account obviously is for emergencies, right? You need to have that. So if the car breaks down or the roof leaks or whatever the case may be, then you've got money that you can use. A regular savings account is for the fun stuff, whereby if your friend's getting married and you want to go to the wedding, or there's a getaway that you want to do, then that's where the regular savings account comes into play. You want to certainly try and avoid debt in to meet emergencies. That's why it's so important to kind of set up that emergency savings account. In addition to that, a regular savings account. So those are sort of the 3 key takeaways, if you will, of working a budget, paying down debt, and starting that emergency savings, regular savings account in order to kind of reverse this trend that you may find yourself on if you're in that category where credit card balances are increasing, student loans are increasing, rent's increasing, all of those kinds of things that make it much harder than ever before, unfortunately, for younger generations. So those are some three things that you can do today to try and improve your financial situation and help improve your overall picture. With that, we're going to take a break here on Dollars and Cents. This is Joel Garris of Nelson Financial Planning, and this is Dollars and Cents. You know, earlier this month, we hosted our annual Shred Day and really had just an amazing outpouring from the community. So it was our pleasure to kind of host a community event that a lot of folks picked up through our Eventbrite and Facebook channels. And so it was great to see so many people coming to properly dispose of their confidential information. And the reality is that's a big part of kind of what the risks are out there in the world at large. A lot of criminals out there in not so friendly places on the planet, and they're looking to steal your identity and ultimately wind up getting money as a result of that. What's particularly disturbing of late, if you kind of start to look at the data, is that there's actually been a significant increase in identity theft of minors, of kids. And, you know, with social media and the data breaches and the constant requests, right, for, you know, minors' social security number, seems like you can't go anywhere. If you're checking your kid in, oh, what's the social security number? What happens is that creates many areas of opportunities for thieves to get access to data. Worse than any of that is some of the direct engagement. We've all heard those stories of strangers engaging with kids online. Friends online are not real friends, but sometimes people can feel that way. And so ultimately, there's a host of ways to get information involving minor children. And just the reality is that with just a few pieces of data, crooks can get issued credit cards, they can take out loans. There's a range of things that they can do in order to perpetuate fraud using identity theft techniques. And so what's really bad is that, you know, as a minor, it's not like you're applying for credit on a regular basis, right? There's no real reason to check your 10-year-old's credit report or credit history. So unfortunately, that means that, which is why kids are becoming more and more of a target, is because it can go on for years undetected and create a much greater amount of issues than ever before. So as a parent, what can you do? Well, in this segment of the program, we're going to give you kind of 3 steps you should do now in order to try and address this very real situation. So welcome on into the program. This, of course, is Dollars and Cents, where we help you make sense out of all of life's decisions involving your dollars. One of Central Florida's longest running radio programs, also a top 25 financial planning podcast on the big wide world web out there. Find us on your favorite podcast channel or go to our YouTube channel as well. Any trouble finding us, go ahead and slide over to our website at nelsonfinancialplanning.com, and there you'll see the icons. They'll immediately connect you to those various platforms. My name, of course, is Joel Garris, certified financial planner, certified financial fiduciary at Nelson Financial Planning, where we got a team of great folks who also happen to be certified financial fiduciaries as well. Plus, some of them are certified financial planners. Some of them are national Social Security advisors. Some of them CPAs. Some of them IRS enrolled agents. We got the whole litany of stuff when it comes to expertise about your finances. So make sure you check us out on our website at Nelson Financial Planning. So more and more minors becoming victims of identity theft, which creates real damage because, frankly, it's unlikely to be realized immediately. And the longer it goes, then the worse the damage is. So what can you do as a parent to kind of address this, to kind of get in front of this? Well, one option is to freeze their credit. And normally for adults, we advise, we don't necessarily, we advise the freezing of the credit as more of kind of a last last resort, if you will, if there's been a full-scale identity theft issue, because with a credit freeze, it does make it harder to apply for credit cards and get loans and things like that. But if you're a kid, well, then you can put a credit freeze on their profile, and then when they turn 18, you can always eliminate that. To do that, you would simply call one of the 3 credit reporting agencies or visit the Federal Trade Commission.gov, FTC.gov website. Yes, it is the Federal Trade Commission. That's the entity that is responsible for governing sort of the internet. So you can go to their website for more information. Fraud alert, you have to renew every year, so that can be a little bit cumbersome. I personally have a fraud alert, but I renew it every year. Freeze just winds up being a little bit more stringent. But again, if you're minors and not applying for credit, then there's no harm in doing the freeze. Of course, as you know, or hopefully you know, you can always check your credit at annualcreditreport.com. That's a great way to check your kid's credit to make sure that there's nothing on it that shouldn't be on it. So a lot of that just involves taking precaution, right? And making sure that their credit history is sort of locked down, if you will. And then, of course, to take normal safeguards beyond that. Things like putting the birth certificate or the Social Security card in safe places. Don't necessarily get in the habit of sharing all of that information readily with all the various providers out there. Certainly you want to be cautious with sharing that information, sending around copies of that, things like that. So make sure you're taking those safeguards in order to reduce the likelihood that your minor child might become a victim of identity theft. And then third, and I think this is important, and I think one of those things that people kind of forget or don't realize, it's important to watch social media and be careful about what you're talking about, beyond monitoring what your kid is doing as well. So there's like 2 different layers here, right? There's what your kid is doing, which obviously you want to make sure that they're not out there on the internet making friends with random strangers. But there's also what you post as well. And a lot of that can seem innocuous, but the reality is it's mostly data mining. Like when you see these personality quizzes, I mean, that's what they're designed to do is to mine your data and learn more and more about you so that they can then use that information to break into whatever logins that you might have. And one of the things that I've always said to my kids is that, you know, your online friends are not your real friends. And so take the time to make sure that your kids handle themselves properly online. I know when my kids were in elementary school, their school had a seminar, and I still remember kind of the main takeaway, which is that anything you post, it is public and permanent. And I think if you think about those 2 words, you might wind up posting a little bit different, particularly if you can impress that on your kids that, yes, in fact, it is public and permanent. And what's interesting is a lot of information comes from things like birth dates. So if you're posting constantly, you know, about, oh, today is my birthday, or yesterday was my kid's birthday, then that's information that you're putting out there to the world at large that you might not want them to know. So if you're posting birthdays, if you're posting names of your kids, what school they go to, what sport they're in, all of that is data that then is out there that is mined on a regular basis to create a profile of you that you might not want somebody to have that profile and be able to use that to crack into various accounts that you might have online. So certainly it is tough when it does happen. Fixing the damage if you are subject and a victim of identity theft is massive. It takes a lot of work. You have to call those companies that issued credit, try and get them to close the accounts. You have to do a theft report at identitytheft.gov. But those are, again, some of the things that you just need to be aware of. And I wanted to talk about that on the program because we just had our Shred Day, thinking about trying to preserve and protect against identity theft. You've really got to be careful now involving your kids as well. And you wouldn't think of that to be the case because they're minors, right? And, you know, they're not going to go out and borrow credit. But somebody who gets their information might very well do that. So you have to be very careful with all of that. Some of the things that you can do to kind of be a little bit more aware of the dangers that are out there. With that, we're going to wrap it on up and get on out of here. Thank you all for listening to this week's episode of Dollars and Cents. My name is Joel Garris with Nelson Financial Planning. If you like what you heard, want to learn more, or meet us personally, visit our website, nelsonfinancialplanning.com. There you can set up an absolutely free conversation that we'll be happy to coordinate for you at a time that is convenient for you. In the meantime, have a great rest of your day. With that, we're out of here on Dollars and Cents with Joel Garris.